Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of PowerViews Live. I'm going to do a more detailed introduction for my guest, Jamie Turner, in just a minute. But Jamie, welcome. Glad to have you here today.
Great to be here, Dan. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, too. It's been a little while. First of all, just a couple of housekeeping items. There is a Q&A box on your right. Please feel free to put any questions out there. I'm going to try to take them as they come before we advance to the next slides. And by the way, there's just a few slides. This is a recorded presentation, and it will be available within about 48 hours. I think last time it was available the same day. And we'll send a link out to everybody who attended or signed up for this event. Stick around for the after party. If we end up having a few questions, we go a little bit beyond 2:30. We'll stick around and answer any questions you have as long as we need to. The PowerPoint is available. You can go to the bottom right-hand corner and download the PowerPoint. And if you find that we're saying something you think others should be hearing about, then use the pound PowerViews Live that you see at the bottom of the screen. And now, let me do a little bit of introduction to Jamie, and then Jamie, you can say anything else you'd like to. What I found most interesting on your LinkedIn profile was that you were at Oxford University. You probably don't want me to say in 1983, but there I've said it already. And two of the more interesting courses that you audited were European Intellectual History from the Enlightenment to Existentialism, and then the other one was High Renaissance Art, and I'm sure that's very necessary for your work today. The other thing is I happened to catch your segment on CNN over the weekend about the NFL and the ads as well as the domestic violence issues, and then I also understand you were on CNN International, I think maybe even the next day, so congratulations on that coverage.
Thanks a lot. It was great to be there, and it's also great to be here. So I'm looking forward to connecting with you and with the rest of the audience. So this will be great.
And maybe just talk for just a second, if you want to, about your book, How to Make Money with Social Media, maybe even your book, Go Mobile. I know I've seen them both and enjoyed them, but what can you tell us?
Yeah, sure. How to Make Money with Social Media just came out in its second edition, and it's been picked up. It's now in Chinese and a couple of other languages as well. And it basically came out as a result of trying to figure out really what is the purpose of social media. And social media, of course, at the time the first edition came out was relatively new. Now it's not so new. And the net is the only reason a business should do any activity is to use it as a way to generate more revenue. So we said, all right, well, if the only reason you want to do social media is to grow your business, then how should you do that specifically? Because after all roads in social media should lead to ROI. In the end, that's what we're all looking for. Then Go Mobile was a book that came out after the first edition of How to Make Money with Social Media. And that was based on just really actually mobile marketing, how to use smartphones. Everybody has smartphones with them these days, and how to use those in order to drive traffic to your retail location, or in the B2B world, create awareness so that people are more familiar with your brand, so that when they do get a phone call from a salesperson, that they know who you are before actually getting the phone call. So two different books, two different topics, both pretty cutting edge, and I had a lot of fun writing them and a lot of fun going around the globe talking about them too. So it's been a good ride.
They're very digestible, too. They're not long, so they're a good airplane read. That's what I found, anyway.
Yeah, good.
And in addition to being your host, I'm the president of PointClear. In 2014, we held roughly 50,000 conversations with various marketplaces, including all of the commercial as well as government. And we generated just short of $100 million in revenue for our clients. So that was a good year, and we're looking forward to an even better 2015. So, Jamie, let me tee this up, and let's go over, on the positive side, obviously social is hot, and there's some great facts and figures on this slide that I was going to ask you to just talk about for a bit.
Yeah, I'm going to dive into those. I am also going to say, Dan, I would love to hear, as we have this dialogue, any jewels of wisdom you've got on how to generate $100 million in revenues for your clients. Seriously, because I'm a B2B person, and part of my job as the owner of my own ad agency is to drive revenue, get clients, and all that sort of stuff. So anytime I am in your presence, I am always like going like this, going, I hope he says something, that I can take with me. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that from you as well. In terms of social media and all that sort of stuff, on the positive side, there's some good things about social media, but I think part of the reason, Dan, you and I started this dialogue was because we said sometimes people misunderstand how to use social media and what social media should be used for, and also what it's best used for. So let's talk about the positive aspects first. YouTube reaches more 18 to 34-year-olds than any other cable network. Now that's amazing if you think about it. In fact, I have a daughter who is 14 years old. Two things that are really, really relevant here. One is I go to her and I say, do you have a Facebook account? She says, no. I say, what do you use mostly? She says, Instagram. And that data, by the way, that's anecdotal data, but that's real data that's starting to show up in real research that's done across the United States. The other thing is I said, honey, this is my daughter, how much, I literally asked her this last week, how many hours, how much did you watch TV today? And she said, I didn't watch TV today. It was like a Saturday. Now, Dan, you and I grew up in the era where there was 3 channels, and Saturday morning was where we sat down and watched cartoons from the moment we got up till your parents kicked you out of the TV room. Here's a daughter who's 14 years old, didn't watch TV that day. So I said, well, honey, how much have you watched TV in the last week? And she said, Dad, I don't watch TV, other than when you and Mom drag me in to watch the news, But other than that, I don't watch TV. So that's a profound shift. So when you see that data point at the top, YouTube reaches more 18 to 34-year-olds than any other cable network. You understand that ain't going away anytime soon, and things are changing, and they're changing pretty rapidly in terms of our media consumption. So jump into the second bullet point. People are spending 1 out of every 7 minutes on Facebook when online. Again, that's a big deal. Facebook is, Dan was kind enough to mention the CNN stuff over the weekend that I did, and I went onto Facebook and just sort of did a little thing that said, hey, by the way, it might be on CNN, tune in if you get it. And I was profoundly surprised at the kind of response it got. I'm going to fess up here, I've never been a big fan of Facebook. I think it's gotten better over the years, just in time for the audience to start shifting where younger people are not using Facebook as much as they used to. But that doesn't mean you can't use it for business to business. You can. They're getting better and better about using Facebook advertising to target prospects and to reel them in. So Facebook as a tool to just do it free in order to generate revenue for your business, it's going to be a tough sell, to be honest with you. Facebook advertising is getting a little bit better, and we can talk a little bit more about that as we keep going through stuff. 74% of consumers rely on social media to influence their purchasing decisions. The number one way that people get information about products and services is word of mouth, which I consider social media to be part of. So the number one way people trust a brand, whether it's a B2B brand or a B2C brand, is by going in and saying, hey, what do you hear about this brand? Is this any good? And either doing that via Facebook, via telephone, via email, whatever it is, that word of mouth stuff really is important. And as that data point says, 74% of consumers rely on social media to influence their purchasing decisions. And then down at the bottom, 97% of all consumers search for local businesses online. So that local is one of the big terms you're hearing right now, local SEO and things like that. One little trick and tip for everybody who is tuning in right now, focus on local SEO, assuming your business is local. Dan's business is local, even though you do national and international work. My business is local, even though I do national and international work too. But one of the things I'm starting to do is on my blog and stuff reference the city of Atlanta and phraseology, like if you're looking for an ad agency in Atlanta, so that Google goes, oh, this must be an ad agency in Atlanta. So when people do a search in Atlanta, we pop up a little bit higher. So keep local in mind. It's kind of the new thing that's going on in SEO right now. To summarize this slide right here, these are some positive things about social media, and there's a lot of good stuff going on social media, but you have to have a balanced approach. And I think, Dan, on the next slide, you'll see the next stuff that goes on about the downside of social media.
Right, and before we flip to that, a couple of things I downloaded in preparation for today's session, and that is from HubSpot, the 2015 social media benchmark reports. It's a big report, but boy, it's got a lot of information. And then some of my guys sorry about this. Some of the guys at Pardot, which is now part of Salesforce, they have the B2B Social Media Guide to Best Practices, a Pardot white paper that was published in 2014. And then, Jamie, to answer one of the questions that you brought up, one of the things I did a couple of weeks ago with our team is sat down with everybody and spent about 30 minutes talking about how to use LinkedIn. And you had asked, how did we generate $100 million worth of business in 2014 for our clients? And a lot of that has to do with, it's not just the old cold calling, it's more of the gold calling or warm, calling, if you will, in terms of using social media to really understand who you're about to have a conversation with, what might be most important to them, because you hear over and over now that really companies don't want to hear about you and your product. They want to hear about solutions to business challenges that they're facing. So, LinkedIn has become a big part of our social media in general, but LinkedIn specifically has become a real asset as a research tool for us. And, one of the things that Ardith Albee told me in the very first session, and this is in her new book, Digital Relevance, is that the first thing she does is go to a LinkedIn contact's recommendations and sees if there's any kind of commonality about that person. If they happen to be a great mentor, that typically comes out, so you can learn a little something about the person from a psychology standpoint that might help you in your interactions with them. So just a couple of thoughts here as we move to the next slide.
Well, before you move, I'm writing down your tip right there, because it's funny how, and this is why I love these kind of dialogues with you, is it's funny how something that is like right under your nose that you just forget about. Like I have a new business meeting tomorrow, and I just emailed one of the guys and saying, can you tell me a little bit about the people we'll be meeting with? I could have saved us both a little bit of time by going in and doing the LinkedIn research, but I'm remembering 2 months ago had a big important meeting in Atlanta with a sports franchise, and one of our partners had done the LinkedIn stuff, and the person who we were meeting with had a really long LinkedIn thing that had everything that she'd ever done. And so he literally was able to go in and say, so let's say that you're interested in results-oriented marketing and direct response is a critical part of your job. And of course, he's saying that because that's what she said. My job at this franchise is direct response marketing. And so he was able to say back to her what's important to her without necessarily having to get that from her to begin with. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. I'm going to do it for tomorrow's meeting.
Yeah, let me know how that goes.
Yeah, I will.
So now we're on the facts and figures, some more facts and figures about social media, and these are the kind of the downsides after we already talked about the upside.
Yeah, there are some downsides. First of which might be, it's not even a data point on here, is something that's now starting to be called the Facebook effect, where you're getting, you do social media as a consumer, as a person, and you get these snapshots of people's lives. Here I am in France, and then we were on our ski vacation, and then here we are in Hawaii, and you're like going, I didn't get to go to France. Wait a minute, this guy hardly ever showed up for class in high school. What's going on here? But it's this sort of, they're starting to do this research. It says social media is starting to make us a little more anxious and depressed because we see highlights of other people's lives, and we forget that there's a lot that goes on between those highlights. It's not all that much fun. So let's do the bullet points here. 44% of Twitter users have never sent a tweet. 44% have signed up and just said, yeah, I got a Twitter account, and then you say, hey, have you ever used it? 44% are going to say, nope, never got around to doing a tweet. 80% of all Pinterest pins are actually repins, indicating kind of a lethargy in the part of the Pinterest community. So basically people are just sort of repinning stuff and looking things. They're not really necessarily participating in it. The majority of people in one survey said that they don't believe Facebook ads are trustworthy. That's actually really interesting. Although, to piggyback on that, I think if you did some research, and I recall seeing stuff like this before, if you did research on advertising in general, you would have the majority of people saying they don't trust advertising. So I'm not sure that's a Facebook issue as much as it's an advertising issue. And then that last bullet point, even though 77% of the Fortune 500 use social media for business, only 12% of all businesses in the U.S. can tie their social media campaigns to revenue. And that's some research we did for how to make money with social media, was the bottom line is people really don't necessarily, even the Fortune 500, they don't even know how to track it, let alone do they track it. They don't even know where to start. and if we want, Dan, as part of this, we can talk about some specifics on that, but it gets a little bit into math, although it would be math that you're familiar with and your audience probably is, but it gets a little bit into math, and a lot of times people kind of glaze over, but I figured out how to do it in 60 seconds, so if you want to go there, we can.
Yeah, go ahead. You're on a roll. Go for it.
Okay. Well, it all comes down to customer lifetime value, and in a very simplified formula for customer lifetime value is how much revenue you generate from a customer during the lifetime that they're with your business. And that's a very, very, very simplified version of it. It gets a lot more complex, but that's just the fundamental thing. So if you're in the B2B world and you get a client, and that client generates $10,000 a year for your business, and you keep them for 3 years, typically, then that's a $30,000 customer lifetime value. So then you have to go in and say, all right, if every time I get a client I make $30,000 on average, what would I spend in order to get that $30,000? And a very, very rough rule of thumb is about 10% of that. So you go, all right, I'd spend $3,000 to make $30,000. Now that you've got that figure of $3,000, you can go in and say, all right, all the marketing I do, including social media, can't add up to more than $3,000 in order for me to get a customer. Otherwise, the ratios are getting a little out of whack. You know, can it be $3,500 for $30,000? Yes. Would it be $2,500 for $30,000 in revenue? That's even better. But that's the kind of ratio you use. So here's how it relates to social media. If you're doing your marketing and all you're doing is social media, and the cost of social media is the labor involved, the time, any production costs on it, and that labor and every other cost in social media costs $3,000 for every customer that you get, and your customer lifetime value is $30,000, then you know that you've basically got a pretty good social media campaign going there. Now, final thing, and then I'll wrap up on this kind of topic. In general, it's very difficult to get clients via social media alone. And this is one of the key points I wanted to make here today is social media is not as good as at customer acquisition as it is at customer retention. So a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to do a social media campaign for free because I'm going to get the intern to do it for free. You know the drill that a lot of businesses do, and they say, we'll just throw up a Facebook page and we'll just do LinkedIn and it'll be free, and then we'll have these leads trickling in and we'll close those leads. Well, the bottom line is that A, social media is not free, and B, it's not necessarily the best lead or the best customer acquisition tool. It's really better at existing customers saying, I like this company. I wonder if they have a Facebook page. Maybe I'll go like their Facebook page, and then they kind of engage with your brand that way. So social media is really better at customer retention than it is at customer acquisition. And that's something that not a lot of people are saying right now because we're still living in the world of social media is free and go use it to generate a bunch of business for your company. When the reality is, and you know, you're hearing it first here on PowerViews, is it's really a better as a customer retention tool than a customer acquisition tool.
Yeah, it's interesting. The B2B social media guide to best practices from Pardot, and I don't own any stock or anything. It happened to be a very interesting report. They were talking about how you as a marketer can sell your company's executives on the use of social media. And they said, which I thought was pretty interesting, they said, you know, start small. You might start with a goal of increasing the number of visitors to your website. Or you might want to start with a goal of increasing people who are signing up for your blog, that kind of thing. And then, you know, carefully measure where the increased audience is coming from, and then it's up to your content to convert them at that point. You know, you're not really going to depend on social media to convert to business. You're going to get them to raise their hand or to get their eyeballs on your website. But I thought it was actually great insight. They actually show several examples of how you can use some key metrics to get a handle on social media. So you know, we've established that there's some good stuff going on. We've established there's some challenges. You know, why are so many businesses using social media, but just a small fraction of them can tie things to revenue?
Well, let me jump back to the Pardot thing because I think that you made a good point there. That's a great way to start, which is let's just start with the fundamentals, which is are we driving a few more visits to our website by using social media? Interestingly, and so I actually support that and agree with it. Interestingly, for my business, the model actually is flip-flopped. It's usually that they go to the website and subscribe and then go back and follow us on social media. Now, the positive side of that equation is those people who are following us on social media then share our content with other people, and then the cycle starts all over. But the cycle it's interesting. And in the book, I was the first one, not the first one, but one of the models I say is do Twitter, and then that leads to a download of an ebook, and then that leads to customer engagement or prospect engagement. That leads to a conversion. When the reality is it actually probably, and this is just hitting me right now as you said that, the reality is they probably download the white paper first and then follow you rather than follow you and then download the white paper. So it's kind of interesting. And in the end, to be honest with you, everybody listening in on this right now and all of us should say, these are models. Models are great to look at and to study and to analyze, but the only thing that really matters is what works for me and my business, and am I seeing progress on my metrics? Because while I'm saying, hey, maybe it happens the other way around, your business may find, no, Jamie, mine actually does work where it comes in on the social media channel and then turns into a conversion, all that. So you just have to test your way to success by measuring yourself against yourself, and that's probably one of the bigger kind of insights to come out of this. If it's okay, Dan, I'll jump in on this question you asked since I got us off on a tangent there for a second. So what's going on and why are so many businesses using social media when only a small fraction of them can tie it to revenue? The bottom line is most businesses start by thinking tactically. The CEO walks in, says, social media is a big deal. Go get us a Facebook page. I mean, we're past that stage now because almost all businesses will have a Facebook page. But they've started tactically, and they haven't thought strategically about it. So we're always trying to get people to step back, and this is sort of business 101. But think about your goals first. Think about your strategies to achieve those goals. Think about the tactics, which social is a tactic or is a series of tactics. And then also, as you're doing that, be putting in metrics. And if it's what Pardot said, and that's fine, I just want to track if we're getting visits to the website via social media. If that's your metric, that's okay. If you want to drill down deeper, though, you start setting up things on your website that say, we're going to track inbound leads from social media. We're going to see how many people converted when they downloaded our white paper off of our website. And then we're going to then tag those people and see which ones of those become customers in the long run. Then I can go back and really do a really in-depth analysis, starting back here saying, hey, this person came in from Twitter, they downloaded our white paper, they got our e-newsletter for 6 months before they finally called us or we called them or they bought our product or service. But we can track that all the way back to there, and that can give us the ability to then figure out if it's actually generating a positive ROI for us or not.
Yeah, it's all about multi-touch, I think, is maybe a way of summing it up. In fact, I'm writing an article right now. It's going to be called something like The Tale of Two Leads. But we had one client sign two $500,000 deals, so a total of $1 million for the business in the fourth quarter. One of the leads required 30-something touches. That's a combination of calls, emails, voicemails, et cetera. The other one was basically a web hit. We made one call, got the person on the line, they turned into a lead, and 4 months later they closed for $500,000 in business. So it's,
wow.
It's basically using all of the tools and all of the, the multi-touch, which I think is the most important part. I'm going to go ahead and flip along here because we've got maybe about another 6 minutes as far as our scheduled time is concerned.
Okay.
So we're going to go to the next slide and talk about, when it does work, what is the secret, for companies that have figured it out, what can we learn from them?
The secret is probably a few things. One is understand the true value of social media is that it lifts everything else you're doing. Dan, you were just talking about that it's really doing everything, that works. It's not doing one thing or another thing. It's like doing all of it. Phone call, content marketing, everything. And then that adds up to what I call in the book to circular momentum. Circular momentum is kind of the snowball effect. It just builds and builds and builds over the course of time. And if you can get that going, then social media is a component of that. Think about it this way. If your sales and marketing program is a bunch of spokes on a wheel, and social media is one spoke, and telemarketing is another, and content marketing is another, and all trade shows is another, and let's say you have 12 spokes on the wheel. The wheel's going down the highway pretty smoothly because you got 12 spokes going, and that's that whole, you got to do all of it. What ends up happening is somebody comes in and says, how can we reduce costs? And you say, I don't know, let's cut this spoke out of the wheel. Can you get away with 11 spokes? Yeah. But then they come in again and they say, let's cut this one out. Okay, now we're down to 10 spokes. Now we're down to 9 spokes. Now we're down to 8 spokes. Suddenly the wheel starts going brr, 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 and it loses its fundamental sort of ability to run. And then you get down to the 7th spoke, you cut that out, and the whole thing blows up. So the point being, it goes back to what Dan said, when social media does work, it works because it's one of the spokes that are in a whole wheel of other spokes. Can you just cut the social media spoke out and get away with it? Yeah, probably. Just like you could probably also cut the trade show spoke out, as long as you're just cutting one spoke out. But it's when you start cutting multiple spokes out of the wheel that the wheel falls apart. So focus, the way it works is focus on everything, try to do everything as well as you possibly can, keep that wheel going down the highway smoothly, and you're home free. And then try to resist the temptation to start cutting multiple spokes out, because it'll make the wheel blow up, and then we won't have a webinar to talk about and all that.
So you've talked about content marketing a couple of times. It's another buzzword, and I think it can be effective in the B2B world because we're B2B and we use a lot of content marketing. But talk a little bit about content marketing for our audience today.
Sure. To quote a great country music song, I was into content marketing before content marketing was cool. I was into it before it was known as content marketing. I was into it before HubSpot was calling it inbound marketing, which is a cousin of content marketing. But the net is this. On the upside, anybody who's going to buy, Dan, you and I are in similar businesses. Our clients are going to be spending tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars with us, and maybe millions of dollars with us. And so in order to make that kind of decision, nobody spends that amount of money unless they know you really, really well. Content marketing is perfect for that because it enables you to have a relationship with a prospect well in advance of actually having a sales relationship with them and then a customer relationship with them. So it smooths that process out. The challenge that's going on right now is everybody's doing it. And so it's getting harder and harder to stand out and to do it well. And so it's just getting more and more intense out there on the content marketing side, and that's why you're seeing podcasts come up and become a thing now. You're seeing webinars like this become more and more important because we're all trying to figure out, hey, everybody's doing free white papers. How do I stand out from all those free white papers? And you're still ahead of the curve if you're doing white papers, and that's a valid, very strong content marketing strategy. But I would encourage everybody to be thinking, how do I make our white papers stand out? How do I make our webinars stand out? What can I do to really differentiate ourselves? Because a lot of people are using content marketing pretty regularly now.
Yeah. So sorry about this. We got a little.
I can fill in the gaps while you're fixing the slides and all that sort of stuff. If there's, I think the next slide was mobile is also getting hyped. Okay, good. I'll talk about that. And I know we only.
I don't know why.
I know we only have a couple of minutes left, but mobile is getting a lot of hype. The mobile is a little more difficult in B2B. It's not impossible. It's a little more difficult. It is a genuinely different animal than it is for the B2C world, where people are going into Target and doing research on what they're about to buy at Target, and then maybe buying it on Amazon when they go home, or maybe buying it there at Target. With the B2B world, it's slightly different. I will say this. Click to call is one of the best things you can do on mobile. What I mean by that is if you're going to get into mobile advertising, and by the way, I'll send a PDF out and I'll share it with Dan. You can forward it to the people who are on this. I have a PDF that walks through the mobile advertising, this really cutting-edge technology we have that you can use in B2B or B2C. But if you're going to use it in the B2B world, what you want to do is make sure that the call to action is a click to call, meaning you don't want to have them fill out a form because very few people will fill out a form on a mobile device, but they will press a button and say, hey, I do want to ask you about that offer that you have or that service that you provide and all that sort of stuff. So that's the B2B kind of tip of the day on the mobile side of the equation.
Have you heard about beacons? I just read an
Sure.
article about beacons. Yeah, so stores are using beacons to push out ads to mobile devices. I just think that's fascinating. We're actually going to talk to Ginger Conlon next month, and one of the 4 topics we have is to talk a little bit about beacons.
Great.
So let's kind of highlight, what do you want the audience to take away from today's session? And the next slide I'll put up here will have our contact information so people can reach out if they've got some additional questions.
That sounds great. A couple of things. One is, the first thing is understand the true value of social media. It's less about generating leads as it is about keeping leads engaged and customers engaged. The second thing is use the metrics that we talked about and about customer lifetime value and about social media ROI. In fact, if you just Google an in-depth guide on calculating the ROI of a social media campaign, I've got a 3,000-word blog post that'll pop up right there. You can go check that out and print it out, and it'll give you everything we talked about. So measure and measure specifically towards revenue. And then finally, understand, I think one of the bigger things coming out of this is that idea of the 12 spokes in the wheel. Social media is going to be one of the spokes. It's an important spoke. It's not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve all your problems, and it's not free. It's because there's labor involved and all that sort of stuff. In the end, though, it can be an important component, an important tool in your toolbox that you're going to use to market or sell your product or service.
Give us the name of that, what they should search for that 3,000-word article once again.
Yeah, it would be an in-depth guide to calculating the ROI of a social media campaign. And probably if you typed in social media ROI, you'd see some of the articles I've written on Mashable and on 60-Second Marketer and on other things about that. But you can definitely get it there, or just visit the 60-Second Marketer website and do the same kind of search on the blog, and you'll see that article pop up.
Okay, so we've got your contact information here. You can visit the 60secondmarketer.com. I happen to know because I went out and looked today that the CNN, I think they're about 3 minutes each. The CNN interviews are out there. I think they were fascinating, talking about the NFL and partially talking about the ads, but also about the domestic violence campaign. Just as a reminder for everybody, on March the 3rd, we have Ginger Conlon, who is the editor-in-chief at Direct Marketing News, and we're going to be taking a look back at marketing in 2015. Jamie, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking time. It's been great to get together again, and I just want to say goodbye to everybody. This is PowerView Live signing off. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye-bye.